Discover the incredible bond, how one millionaire transformed a black cleaning lady's baby's life. Forever Grace stood in the lobby of the high-rise office, the sun streaming through the glass, and for a moment she felt invisible under its gaze. Her worn hands gripped the dust cloth, but it was her heart that felt heavy. 2 children depended on her, and the weight of the world pressed down. In a city that never stopped moving, she was just another blur, another worker doing what she had to do to survive. The early morning hours melted into days, filled with cleaning the lavish spaces of those who floated above, while she toiled beneath. Would her life ever change? The thought flickered through her mind, a small spark desperately in need of fuel. As she wiped the polished desk in James's office, she caught the unexpected sound of her baby's coos harmonizing with a faint piano melody, a haunting echo in the sterile silence. It had been so long since she'd allowed herself to entertain the notion of music, a dream she thought she buried beneath bills and responsibilities. She hesitated, her fingers brushing against the piano's lacquered surface. Would those notes hold a promise, a flicker of something more than survival? Yet the reality of her situation loomed large. A cleaning lady doesn't need dreams, she thought. She needed food, shelter, safety for her kids. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. James was not just the millionaire businessman she cleaned for, he was a paradox. His life seemed perfect, but filled with an emptiness only the richest could know. Each laugh that echoed from him felt like a mask, concealing a yearning he couldn't articulate. Would he ever understand her plight? The thought made Grace's heart race. She wanted to shield her children from the harsh realities of the world. But the more she learned about James, the more she sensed a connection, the flickers of potential, of light hidden within shadows. This bond might lift them both out of their circumstances, yet the fear gnawed at her like an unrelenting wave. What if he was just another wealthy man playing savior? Keenly aware of the judgment lurking in the corners of their lives, Grace often fought against self-doubt. She logged every hour, every unpaid invoice inside her aching mind. And the thought that James's wealth came from generations of privilege struck her like a slap. Torn, she grappled with her instincts. Was his kindness a ploy of guilt? The invisible chains of societal expectations tightened around her, and she wondered if their paths were meant to cross at all. How could someone so privileged, so blind to her struggle, grasp the depth of her resentment? The music danced in the background, each note pulling at her, urging her to break free. Yet how could she confront this whirlwind of emotions? The unresolved history of their families loomed larger than any melody. Panic surged through her, her breath coming irregularly as she wrestled with her own desires against the truth that shadowed him. Here was a man with a gift. If she dared to look, maybe he could see the burdens she carried too. But could she trust him? As the fear and frustration coiled around her heart, she knew this moment would be pivotal. Would she grasp the chance for herself and her children? Or would she push it away, blinded by distrust in a world that demanded resilience? Through the piano's haunting echoes, she felt the silence of an uncertain fate, urging her closer to the brink. There was only one way forward, one question resonating in the air. Can this unlikely friendship defy the harsh realities that kept whispering to them both? Grace stood in the office, the sun reflecting off polished surfaces, casting sharp angles that felt disorienting. The piano's melody had stirred something deep within her, awakening a desire she had long buried, a desire to be more than just a cleaner, to reclaim her love for music and creativity. Shaking her head, she brushed the fleeting thoughts aside, reminding herself of her obligations. Dreaming of melodies would not feed her children or pay the bills. But as she glanced toward James, who was now immersed in a meeting with his associates, she couldn't help but consider the possibilities. The way he spoke, his earnestness fused with charisma, reminded her that beneath the surface of his wealth, there might be potential for genuine connection. There was something about his laughter that felt real, as if he was searching for authenticity amid his riches. Her fingers itched to explore the piano, to pour her emotions into music, to craft the narratives held captive in her heart. Yet, a voice inside her warned that exposing her vulnerabilities could lead to heartache. She was not naive. She had lived too many years on the margins of trust and abundance. Instead of allowing herself to become lost in melody, she clung to practicality, as she always had. Her internal struggle was palpable as she folded the dustcloth, thoughts racing. Could she dare to approach him, to express a part of herself that had long been silenced by the demands of survival? The piano's siren call echoed in her mind, laced with memories of her mother's music, her last connection to a simpler time of joy. Each note had been a thread binding her to her past. Yet here she stood, burdened by the weight of roles she played: mother, provider, cleaner. Determination gripped her. Perhaps this was an opportunity not only to confront her fears, but to reshape her narrative, one that had been defined by hardship and struggle for too long. If James's resources could help her find her voice again, might he not be as blind to her struggles as she feared? If she hesitated too long, she could miss a chance for transformation, for both of them. A moment later, emboldened by a flicker of hope, she found herself approaching the piano. Hands trembling with a mix of excitement and fear, she brushed her fingers over the keys, releasing a hesitant chord into the office atmosphere. The sound hung momentarily, then dissipated into the bustling world outside, a faint reminder of a life she dared to reclaim. James turned, curiosity replacing the dominant look of focus on his face. There was surprise in his eyes as he observed Grace, a glimpse of intrigue igniting within him. This was not merely the cleaner. This was a woman with depth and mystery. Could he see her struggles beneath that surface? "Do you play?" he asked, his voice softened by unexpected warmth. The question loomed over her like a spotlight, exposing her fears and aspirations. She took a deep breath, locking eyes with him. "Not really. Just playing for the first time in a long while." The sincerity open on his face dispelled her doubts, if only for a fleeting moment. Could he help her explore the depths of her passion? Pushed by a mix of fear and exhilaration, she leaned into the moment. "Maybe you could teach me," he added, a hint of mischief dancing in his tone. Uncertainty gripped her. Was this playful invitation genuine, or just another frivolous gesture? Yet as she met his gaze, something formidable emerged. A spark of potential that ignited long-held dreams buried beneath layers of doubt. Grace could sense it, the chance to embark on a new path, not just for herself, but for her children, for her identity, for a future woven through music. She deliberated her next move, aware that every decision from this moment held the power to reshape her life. Would she step further into this connection, or would she retreat into the safety of what she knew? The air was thick with possibility, her heart pounding as she pondered the choice before her. It felt like a precipice, dared to leap into this unknown and rediscovered self, or stay within the confines of her current existence. "Maybe I will," she murmured finally, neutral territory bridging vulnerabilities. The moment crystallized, and for the first time in years, hope surged within her. But as excitement bubbled beneath the surface, a new question shadowed her thoughts. What would it take to break free from the chains of her past? Grace felt the world shift, an awareness settling in that challenges loomed ahead, a confrontation waiting on the horizon. The music enveloped her, and she realized this was just the beginning. The next week came quickly, each day blending into the next, a haze of routine interspersed with moments of anticipation. Grace found herself waking each morning with a flicker of excitement that had been absent for years. The tentative agreement to teach and learn music with James had ignited a small flame within her, something that whispered of possibilities. But such flames were as fragile as they were potent, teetering on the edge of her ingrained practicality. As she entered the office, the familiar scent of lemon-scented disinfectant filled the air, blending uncomfortably with the stirrings of creativity clawing at her chest. She paused at the piano, its polished surface gleaming under the overhead lights, a beacon of her unknown future. James approached, his presence both comforting and disarming. "Ready for our first lesson?" he asked, a smile illuminating his sharp features. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, the courage swelling in her chest, but tempered by the weight of doubt. Sitting at the piano, she marveled at how she could simultaneously be thrilled and terrified. The keys felt cold beneath her fingertips, urging her to express herself while her mind raced with implications. Could she really teach him? Would she be able to display her once cherished gift without the veil of insecurity? As they began, Grace found herself confronting an unexpected reality. James was a natural. He absorbed the basics with ease, his laughter and playful banter stripping away her hesitation. Her once timid instruction became more confident as she found joy in sharing what she loved. Each note, each mishap, pulled her deeper into a forgotten rhythm, a rhythm that was distinctly hers. But beneath this burgeoning friendship lurked a silent fear. Their worlds were miles apart, his realm of privilege painfully contrasting with her struggles. What if he grew bored of her? What if he saw her as merely a curiosity, an entertaining project? She reminded herself to keep that wall of practicality high, lest their bond go beyond the piano. Yet each session deepened their connection. James spoke openly about his aspirations and disappointments, and Grace began to peel back the layers of her own narrative, sharing remnants of her past through the lens of music. The conversation flowed like the melodies, weaving stories of her mother's gentle lullabies and the heartbreak that followed her death. Sharing these moments felt perilous, yet liberating. Yet every vulnerable exchange surfaced a haunting reminder that change frightened her. Each step forward felt like dancing along the edge of a cliff. Wouldn't it be easier to slip back into the shadows of her roles and responsibilities? Dreams felt heavy when tied to reality. The stakes of her aspirations loomed large. One afternoon, as they played in tandem, a soft melody drifted from the piano and enveloped them. James looked over, his gaze penetrating, stirring something within her. "You have a gift, Grace. Don't hide it." His encouragement hung in the air like a challenge, stirring a tempest within her. Would revealing her true self be the path to true transformation? Yet showing her true colors came with risks she knew all too well. That night, nestled in her small apartment, Grace lay wide awake, her heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She imagined what her life might look like if music pulsed at its center instead of just being a flitting memory. Could she dare to believe in herself enough to break free of the chains binding her to fear? In the quiet, Grace resolved to push past her doubts. But just as hope surged within her, darkness whispered ominously from her past. The shadows of her responsibilities loomed large. Who would she need to confront to truly embrace her identity as an artist? New questions arose, wrapping around her heart like vines. Could she balance her growing friendship with James while facing the fears tied to her family responsibilities? As she exhaled slowly, feeling the tension shift in her chest, a single thought crystallized in her mind. The time had come to face the fears that threatened her newfound path. And as she drifted into sleep, the melody of her mother's music played faintly in her dreams. What would this confrontation reveal about the woman she was meant to be? The following week unfolded like a carefully composed symphony, each day presenting new challenges and revelations. Grace found herself increasingly dedicated to her lessons with James. The piano became a sanctuary where their contrasting worlds met, notes intertwining and blending to form something entirely unique, a space where vulnerability and ambition coexisted. James's unwavering enthusiasm both inspired and unnerved her. As they practiced, his innate ability to grasp concepts quickly pushed her own boundaries. She felt exposed, realizing that teaching him forced her to confront her own inadequacies. The fears she thought she had tucked away began to resurface, each one louder than the last. Was she a fraud? Did she deserve this budding connection, operating from a place of passion rather than practicality? In a moment of daring spirit, she decided to show him one of her original compositions. The song, composed in the aftermath of her mother's passing, was a piece she had never shared with anyone. The vulnerability felt akin to peeling back an intimate layer of her soul, leaving her raw and exposed. "Wow," James whispered, spellbound, as the last note hung delicately in the air. "That was beautiful, Grace. You need to keep writing." A moment of silence passed before he continued. "It's like you've put everything into that piece. I can feel it." His words pierced through the veil of doubt she wore like armor. For an instant, she felt herself considering the unimaginable, sharing more, expressing herself further. But soon, the flood of memories and doubts crashed over her. How could she risk this connection when the foundation of her confidence was precarious? The conversations that followed over the next few sessions began to shift subtly. James started revealing more about his own insecurities, doubts masked behind his charm. They shared stories not just about their pasts, but about their futures. Dreams laid bare under the soft glow of the piano's lamp. Grace began to see James not just as a wealthy man with a carefree existence, but rather as a kindred spirit grappling with his own uncertainties. Yet the weight of her family responsibilities tugged at her heart. As she grew closer to James, the voices from her past, her mother's hopes, her siblings' expectations, echoed louder in her mind. They weighed heavily on her, each duty reminding her of how deeply embedded her past was in her present. On a particularly intense afternoon, she paced her living room, her thoughts spiraling. Could a shift toward her ambitions mean neglecting those she loved? Her heart ached with the thought of choosing a path that would be seen as a betrayal. She couldn't escape the feeling that she was living a dual life, one, the dutiful family caretaker, and the other, a burgeoning artist awakened by music. That night, she sat down at her piano, fingers hovering over the keys. She had always used music as a form of escape. Now it felt like a form of confrontation. Should she confront her past, challenge her family's expectations? The melodies poured forth, a mix of fear and courage flooding the room. She began to compose again, channeling everything into her music, daring to explore paths she had avoided for so long. As she played, she contemplated the possibility of performing publicly, sharing her compositions with an audience for the first time. The thought both exhilarated and terrified her. Would it allow her to live authentically, or would it be yet another burden? In this process of creation, something shifted in her mind. Perhaps it was time to reclaim her identity, not just as a musician, but as someone fully in charge of her future. But as the last note faded into the night, she realized there were more conversations to have, more decisions to make. Growth necessitated confrontation. Who would she reveal her ambitions to first? James's words replayed in her mind. It was time to embrace her gift. The road ahead felt daunting, but seeds of hope began to sprout within her. Everything hinged on what she would decide next. Would she have the courage to present herself to her family, her community, and James in a way that felt authentic? This conflict bubbled just beneath the surface, ready to erupt. And as dawn broke gently through her window, illuminating her path ahead, one thought crystallized in her mind. The moment of truth was approaching, and she would have to face the music. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating Grace's cluttered living room. She stared at her piano, its wood gleaming and inviting, yet it felt like a fortress behind its keys. Each session with James had broken down walls she thought were impenetrable, but now they felt like shifting sands beneath her feet. As she took a deep breath, the weight of her decision loomed larger than ever. Public performance, sharing her music, standing in front of others, raw and vulnerable, was a prospect that made her stomach churn. But beneath the panic lay an ember of excitement, a flicker of possibility she hadn't dared to acknowledge fully. It was time to confront her fears, to decide if she would step into her greatness or remain wrapped in the cocoon of safety that suffocated her ambitions. The following day, Grace met James at their usual spot. The air carried a lightness that belied the storm swirling in her heart. His smile ignited an internal spark, and as they began to practice, she felt compelled to transform that energy into something tangible. After an hour she paused, the notes lingering like unspoken confessions in the air. "James," she began, her voice tremoring slightly, "I've been thinking about performing my music, for real, not just for you." His eyes lit up. "That's amazing, Grace. You've got to do it. You have the talent and everyone deserves to hear it." His support was like a lifeline, pulling her from the depths of doubt. But the shadow of her family's expectations cast a pall over her moment of clarity. What if they think I'm wasting my time, that I'm chasing some dream that isn't grounded in reality? She countered, the doubt creeping back in, clamping down on her spirit. "Just because you pursue your passion doesn't mean you're neglecting your responsibilities," James replied, unwavering in his conviction. "Your family loves you, Grace. They want to see you happy." His words pierced through her insecurities, yet the cynic in her whispered that pursuing happiness often came at a cost. What if she alienated her family? What if they could only see a cleaning lady chasing a foolish dream? After their practice, as Grace walked home, she felt a tug-of-war within, battling the pull of comfort and the yearning for authenticity. Could she truly embrace both roles? And how? She sat at the piano that evening and composed a new piece, channeling her turmoil, weaving her journey into notes that danced across the air. With each keystroke, she poured her fears into the music. Each haunting chord sang of doubt and determination, a blend of everything she wished to express, but hadn't dared to say aloud. That night, she lay in bed, the melody looping in her mind. How could she share this part of herself, navigate her commitments to her family, while fostering her emerging identity as an artist? A flicker of resolution ignited. She would begin with a small gathering, an intimate evening with her family, stripping away the formalities, exposing her truths in the comfort of those who had known her longer than anyone else. Perhaps that was the first step, showing them how deeply she had felt her mother's absence and how her music was beginning to fill that void. But once she decided to pursue this path, she couldn't backtrack. There was no safety net to catch her if she faltered. The fear nestled deeper, morphing into a challenge. Could she bear the potential disappointment, the questioning looks? But was it worse than living without ever trying? The next day, feeling empowered yet fearful, she crafted a message inviting her family over for a family night filled with music and sharing. Just putting pen to paper stirred her anxiety, yet it felt liberating. As she sealed the envelope, she realized that confronting her truth would require her to confront them too. What would their reaction be? Would they embrace her endeavor or dismiss it as another flight of fancy? Would she have the courage to face their scrutiny? An intricate web of emotions coursed through her, determination, fear, and an urgent desire for acceptance. The moment she had pondered, the moment of truth, was inching closer. And as she stared at the envelope now resting on her kitchen table, another thought emerged. She had taken the first step, but now it was time to prepare for the inevitable confrontation that awaited her. The music was not just ready to be shared. She was ready to face the echoes of her past and embrace her future. Grace's heart thundered as the night approached, the envelope still resting ominously on the kitchen table. She pushed a chair away and stood, her fingers trembling as they traced the rim of her piano. Her sanctuary felt more like a battleground now, a place where every note she played seemed to express her uncertainty. She had spent the day oscillating between excitement and dread, preparing mentally for what lay ahead. Family night was a mere few hours away, and the thought of sharing her music made her stomach churn. Would they hear the longing in her notes, or simply perceive it as a distraction? The questions twisted in her mind like an endless loop. As dusk fell, Grace lit a few candles, their flames flickering like her resolve. The music sheet she had been working on lay atop the piano, the ink barely dry. With a few breaths to steady herself, she began to play softly, letting the familiar melody soothe her nerves. The music, a representation of her journey so far, spilled from her fingers, melding vulnerability with strength. In that moment, she felt a flicker of hope, a reminder that she had crafted something deeply personal. When her family arrived, the atmosphere shifted. Her mother, brother and sister filled the room with chatter, laughter, and the delicious aroma of the lasagna her mother had brought. Grace watched their interactions with a mix of admiration and apprehension. They were oblivious to the internal battle raging within her, a conflict between who she had been and who she was becoming. "Grace, are you going to sing for us tonight?" her little brother asked, his eagerness palpable. The innocence of his question struck her like a chord, reverberating through her mind and heart. Her family settled around the piano, the chairs forming a semicircle that was both inviting and terrifying. With a final deep breath, she glanced at the envelope, now buried among family recipes and old photographs on the table. It was a silent affirmation of her intention, the first step towards sharing her world with them. "Tonight I wanted to share a little something I've been working on," Grace began tentatively, her voice wavering slightly. It's a piece about my journey and the things that matter to me." With that, she began to play. The notes flowed at first hesitantly, but as she lost herself in the music, the sounds transformed into a narration of her struggles and aspirations. Each chord resonated with the memories of her mother's encouragement and the fear of disappointment that had often paralyzed her. When the last note lingered in the air, silence enveloped the room. Grace held her breath, waiting for a reaction, her heart pounding in her chest. She studied her family's expressions, searching for understanding or critique. Finally, her mother broke the stillness. "That was beautiful, Grace, truly beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. In that moment, Grace felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Her mother's approval, though something she'd longed for, now felt secondary to the validation of her own voice. "Yes, sis, that was awesome," her brother chimed in, a grin spreading across his face. His enthusiasm ignited a spark in her. "You should do that more often." But just like the notes that had poured out, a question flickered in the back of Grace's mind. The admission of her ambitions felt liberating yet daunting. "I was hoping to maybe perform at a few places around town," she ventured, gauging their reactions. The air grew thick with tension. Her family's faces shifted from excitement to concern. "What do you mean, perform?" her sister asked, the skepticism creeping in. "Like a real performance." As they started to probe deeper, questioning her decision and her motivations, internal conflict bubbled to the surface. Did they not see the burning passion behind her melody? "Why not just focus on your job, Grace? You have responsibilities," her mother interjected, a hint of worry lacing her words. With each comment, Grace felt the fire within her dimming, but it sparked anew with each note she had shared. She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the tidal wave of doubt. "This isn't just a phase," she said with newfound determination. "I want to do this. I need to." The moment of vulnerability brought silence again, but this time it felt charged with potential. In that space between doubt and acceptance, Grace understood that the journey she was on required audacity, a willingness to confront not just her family's expectations, but her own fears. Immediately after, she sensed the tension shifting. Their expressions softened. Perhaps it was time for them to see more than the cleaning lady, the artist, the woman with dreams of her own. And in that burgeoning understanding, a new question hung in the air, unspoken yet potent. What else would she need to confront to truly claim her identity as an artist? At that moment, Grace realized the stakes were higher than she had anticipated. The journey to acceptance of herself and her family's perception awaited her still. A new layer of complexity unfolded, and she would have to navigate it with care and courage. Could she balance these conflicting identities while pursuing her passion, or would she face an even tougher reckoning ahead? The echoes of her piano lingered in the air, only amplifying the urgency to discover the next chapter of her life. As the last echoes of Grace's song faded, the warmth of her family's approval met her with a conflicting chill of trepidation. The moment felt monumental. She had just stepped onto the precipice of her aspirations, but the ground beneath her felt unsteady. Each enthusiastic clap from her brother still rang in her ears like an unsettling reminder of the expectations that now loomed larger. Grace's heart raced, not from the joy of performance, but from the realization that she'd just unveiled a part of herself that could no longer be hidden. Her family's questioning glances had sparked a disquieting revelation. This was not merely her struggle, but theirs too. They held on to their perceptions of who she was, while she fought for the right to redefine herself. With a deep breath, she gathered her thoughts. "I appreciate your support, really, but I need you to understand. This matters to me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The encouragement had chipped away at the walls of doubt she had built, but could it be enough to dismantle the fortress of familial expectations? Before anyone could respond, Grace made an impulsive decision. "Let's talk about this." She motioned for everyone to sit down around the table, the remnants of lasagna serving as an unlikely centerpiece for their much-needed dialogue. Seated together, she could feel the tension coiling among them like a tightly wound spring. "What are you all so afraid of?" Grace challenged gently, her eyes scanning their faces. "This isn't about being reckless or abandoning my responsibilities. This is about pursuing something that fulfills me." Her mother opened her mouth to protest, but Grace cut in, needing to voice the truth that had hovered in the air unacknowledged. "You all see me as the cleaning lady, but that's not all I am. I've always been the steady one, but I long for more than just stability. I crave creativity and expression." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with a weighty mix of realization and resistance. Her family exchanged knowing looks. It was a moment of reckoning, perhaps not just for Grace, but for them as well. They could no longer ignore the woman she was trying to become. She leaned forward, an ember of determination igniting within her. "All I ask is for your belief in me. It's terrifying to step into this next phase, and I can't do it alone. I need your encouragement, not your doubt." As the words settled, the flickering candles seemed to grow brighter. Her family's trepidation was palpable, yet so was the potential for transformation. Grace watched as her brother shifted, his eyes flickering with something deeper than youthful enthusiasm. "I get it," he said after a long pause. "We all want you to be happy, but it's just scary to think about you exposing yourself like that. What if it doesn't work out?" "Then I'll learn," Grace replied, her voice unwavering. "But I won't find my answers without trying. The worst kind of failure comes from never having the courage to begin." The room vibrated with a shared weight of what she was asking for, their trust. Tension hung in the air, and Grace could almost hear the gears within their minds turning. Was this willingness to embrace uncertainty a reflection of her own growth, or merely the beginning of a complex web of emotional resistance they had to confront? After moments of silence passed, Grace felt a small wave of relief wash over her. Perhaps something had shifted. "I want you to be a part of this. Help me look for places to perform. I want you to understand what this means to me and to witness it firsthand." Gradually, nods of agreement began to emerge. Her mother's face softened as she searched for the right words. "I suppose if this is what will make you happy, then we should support you. Just promise me you'll be careful." Grace couldn't suppress the grin spreading across her face, her heart swelling with a renewed sense of belonging. The path was still laden with uncertainty, but for the first time she could see a glimpse of possibility ahead. Yet, as hope blossomed within her, doubt tinged her thoughts. What if she wasn't ready for the reality of performing, for the vulnerability it demanded? Navigating this newfound openness would require more than just courage. It demanded a commitment to change from both her and her family. And somewhere within her, a stirring question began to take root. How would she face the inevitable naysayers in her pursuit of artistry? As the discussions breathed life into her aspirations, Grace realized a bigger challenge lay ahead, a test of resilience not only against familial reservations, but also against her internal fear of judgment from the wider world. How far could she push her boundaries, and at what cost? It became clear she was standing at a crossroads, driven by the pulse of ambition, but shadowed by the uncertainty of performance. The music that had swelled through her fingers now echoed as a backdrop to her deeper, swirling anxieties about identity and acceptance. This was more than just embracing her role as an artist. It was about affirming her place within her family and her own heart. Would she have the wisdom to balance these competing identities, or would the unpredictability of her dreams lead her to discover unexpected truths? Somewhere in that silence, resilience took root, quietly inviting her to confront not just the art she wished to create, but the self she hoped to become. Would she step into the limelight or remain in the shadows? The questions lingered, a challenge hovering at the edge of her new reality. In the days that followed, Grace wrestled with her newfound determination. The words shared with her family reverberated in her mind, forming a complex melody of hope and fear. Each moment she spent in their presence was tinged with a heightened awareness of her role, not just as their daughter or sister, but as a budding performer, vulnerable yet resolute. She decided to look for local venues, places where she could showcase her talent. The internet became her window to opportunity, and she tapped into online forums, social media groups, and any available resources to understand the performance scene. The blank pages of her notebook were filled with names of open mic nights, bar signs that wished for local talent, and community spaces that craved artistic endeavors. Yet as she organized potential venues, an all-too-familiar knot of anxiety coiled tighter in her stomach. During a late-night session at her kitchen table, the faint glow of her screen illuminated her features, amplifying the resonance of her inner dialogue. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, plagued by a gnawing thought. What if they don't connect with me? What if they're unkind? The haunting whispers of doubt threatened to drown out the more assertive voice that urged her to push forward. Resolving to confront this uncertainty head-on, Grace took a step that shocked even her. She recorded a short video of herself singing, just her, the flickering light of her kitchen, and an unassuming webcam. It was raw and unedited. For once, she allowed herself to be vulnerable, to showcase not just her talent, but also the very essence of who she was. Shortly after she posted it, her heart raced again, not from applause, but from fear of judgment, both online and in her own home. What if her family didn't like it? What if all her efforts were dismissed? She had extended herself into the world, crafting an identity rooted in uncertain acceptance. A few days later, she gathered the courage to show her family the video during dinner. The tension felt as electric as the night she had sung for them. Their eyes absorbed the screen, and their expressions reflected a quiet turmoil that mirrored her own. As the clip ended, silence enveloped the kitchen. Her mother's gaze softened, while her brother wore a contemplative expression, processing what he just witnessed. In that moment, Grace felt an unexpected surge of defiance. She had shared a piece of her soul, one that could easily be broken, but remained defiantly intact. "I'm not asking for your approval," she forced herself to say, "but I need you to see what matters to me." Her mother sighed, caught between pride and the instinctive concern rooted deep within. "It's just raw," she finally admitted. "This isn't what we expected, Grace." "Maybe that's the point," she insisted, emotions coursing through her. "This is who I'm becoming, but I need you to be part of that." Her brother leaned forward, a hint of admiration blossoming in his tone. "It's brave, you know, putting yourself out there like that, even if it's not polished." Tiny flickers of acceptance danced in Grace's chest, hesitant yet undeniable. Each word of support felt like fuel, but it was also a doorway to deeper accountability. If they were beginning to embrace her journey, then it was incumbent upon her to seek out every opportunity that awaited her. As the conversation morphed into discussions about where she could perform next, Grace felt momentum building, a cascade of potential waiting for her response. Yet underlying that excitement was a constant question flickering at the back of her mind. How vulnerable could she really afford to be? Her resolve strengthened, and she practically leaped toward her notebook. The venues collected there represented more than a list. They reflected choices, risks, and challenges to embrace head-on. The prospect of performing began to feel almost tangible. But as excitement mounted, the looming shadow of society's critique began to materialize. Was she truly prepared to face a world often harsh, quick to judge, and unyielding in its expectations? The realization hit her like a bolt. This journey would require not just artistic expression, but a relentless spirit to withstand the inevitable pains of vulnerability. In that moment, Grace understood that transformation was not only about finding her voice, it was about fortifying herself against scrutiny. Would her courage carry her through the challenging road ahead? Ironically, she found solace in her burdens, a symbol of the resilience she hoped to cultivate. As the evening wound down, the laughter and chatter of her family echoed around her, grounding her. But in the depths of her contemplations, a new sense of urgency blossomed. The time was drawing near for her to stand before others and bare her heart, to transform her aspirations into a reality outside her family's warm embrace. And thus, Grace began her preparations for an open mic night, her first real step into the realm of performance. But as she strategized her set list, a nagging voice whispered warnings of uncertainty and potential rejection. The thrill of the stage also demanded the price of authenticity, one that might reveal more than just her music. Now, poised at the threshold of performance, Grace felt the tension coalesce within her, a dawning awareness that the beginning was merely another form of the unknown. Would she thrive in that exposure, or falter beneath the weight of expectation? The looming opportunity beckoned, a challenge that could redefine everything she had fought to express. As she ran her fingers across her carefully chosen songs, the question lingered painfully. What if the stage didn't yield acceptance, but instead unearthed her greatest fears? The dim glow of early evening sun streamed through Grace's window, igniting the soft notes of her stress-laden thoughts. She sat before her notebook, contemplating the lyrics of the final song entry. Each line felt like a step further toward her destiny, yet the weight of the moment pressed down like an iron hand squeezing her resolve. Her chosen song had to resonate. This first performance needed to capture more than just a fleeting moment. It had to be the ignition of something profound within herself and the audience. What if they don't care? The question floated through her mind like a stubborn shadow, but just as quickly she reminded herself of the nights spent in solitude with her music, of the comfort it offered her in times of despair. This was about her expression, but could she truly share such a personal part of herself without crumbling under the gaze of strangers? Her fingers moved instinctively, scribbling notes about the performance, how she would stand, how she might connect with the faces in the crowd. Each detail was important, but the most pressing question loomed. How could she pour her heart into a song when her heart felt like a caged bird, fluttering against her ribcage? She took a deep breath, attempting to calm the tempest within. The moment she'd revealed her musical self to her family had been a breakthrough, but this was an entirely different beast. Even so, she had to confront the inevitability of judgment, not just from her potential audience, but from herself. Wasn't this the crucible where true artistry was born, a melding of hope and fear, vulnerability and strength? Compelled by a surge of determination, Grace pushed back at her doubts. She stood and began pacing her small room, running through the melodies in her head. Familiarity bred comfort, but now it was underscored by something deeper: resolve. She couldn't control how the audience would react, but she could shape her performance, mold her message as a sculptor shapes clay. Time slipped away as she practiced, running through the song multiple times until the notes felt like home, woven into her identity. Each repetition fortified her confidence, transforming some of her anxiety into anticipation. She could feel the shift. The monstrous what if began to lose its power in the face of her commitment to authenticity. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows gathered around her resolve. A new fear crept in. What if her risk brought vulnerability, but not acceptance? She knew that the stage was not just about singing. It was an exposure, a brave unveiling of who she was beneath the surface. Her mind circled back to the pivotal question: what if she reveals too much? Justice in her art. She remembered her brother's words, even if it's not polished. Those unrefined moments were dignified and filled with a kind of beauty that could only emerge from authentic expression. The thought provided a flicker of encouragement amidst the haze of uncertainty. With abrupt clarity, Grace reached for her phone and opened the event page for the open mic night. The twinkling count of attendees left her both excited and terrified. Each name was a potential connection, a chance for empathy or indifference. She scrolled down to the comments section, where nerves rendered her momentarily frozen. But somewhere buried within those async messages was an energy that buzzed with possibility. Others had shared their fears too. They bonded over the same uncertainties that plagued her. The decision crystallized within her. It was time to confront all of it, not just for acceptance, but for her evolution as a performer. She wanted to embrace the fear, to dance with it, and to use it as fuel rather than a chain. As she packed her notebook and put her phone down, she felt a deep urge to write again, a song for herself, a promise layered with grit and honesty. Just as she finished the last line, her phone lit up with a new notification, a message from the event organizer. "You ready for tonight? The spotlight won't wait." In that instant, a wave of adrenaline coursed through her veins. This was it. The moment of truth was about to descend. Would she transcend the limitations she had placed upon herself, or would the self-doubt consume her as she stepped into the world beyond her comfort zone? The stage beckoned, and as Grace envisioned herself under the spotlight, she could almost feel both freedom and fear entwining. Now the question was not just about acceptance, but about survival as an artist. The night was unfolding rapidly, and the stakes were higher than ever. Could she rise with the challenges, or would she succumb to the weight of expectations threatening to pull her under? The answer awaited as she prepared to leave the safety of her space and step into a much larger realm of possibility. Evening had settled in, as Grace embarked on her journey to the open mic night. The streets were illuminated by neon signs and laughter, creating an atmosphere alive with potential. Grace stood at the entrance of the venue, heart pounding, a mixture of exhilaration and anxiety coursing through her veins. This was the moment that could define her trajectory, the leap she had rehearsed in her mind countless times. Yet standing at the threshold felt daunting. The weight of it all pressed in on her, familiar doubts creeping back. As she stepped through the door, the energy of the room enveloped her. Musicians warmed up at various corners, laughter erupted near the bar. Conversations buzzed with life. Amidst the noise, she felt a stark moment of clarity. This was not just a venue, it was a sanctuary, a place filled with fellow dreamers daring to bare their souls. She was no longer merely a cleaning lady, but a co-creator of something genuine. Grace had jotted down her set list on the notepad, tucked securely in her pocket. As she watched the performers before her, she absorbed each note, each performance, the vulnerability spilling across the audience. These artists, much like her, navigated the balance between fear and the need to be seen. She felt her pulse sync with theirs. This was a community, and she was ready to play a part. The host called her name. The spotlight temporarily polarized. Grace's breath hitched. With each step towards the microphone, the tremor in her limbs echoed her internal struggle. Could she truly articulate the narrative she held inside? In this acute moment, all her hesitations solidified, yet amid them emerged a new resolve. She was prepared to confront her vulnerability, to bring the truth of her journey into the open. Taking the microphone in hand, she surveyed the audience. There were expectant faces, some friendly, others with brows furrowed in judgment. Or was it empathy? All she knew was that they were there to experience something, and she was ready to deliver her truth. As the first chords resonated from the piano, she felt those familiar emotions flood back. Each note she played filled her with purpose. The music poured from her fingers, weaving through the room, conjuring stories of loss, hopes, and rebirth. Grace closed her eyes, anchoring herself in the melody. It was a liberating act of defiance against the years spent shrouded in silence. The audience leaned forward as she sang, her voice rising and falling like the waves of the ocean, each phrase imbued with poignant emotion. She liberated her fears and injected them into the performance, letting the raw tumult dance among the lyrics. For the first time, she allowed herself to transform from performer to the embodiment of raw passion. When she finished, silence engulfed the room, punctuated only by the soft echo of the final note. Grace's heart raced, fear weaving through anticipation. Then, a swell of applause erupted, washing over her like a wave crashing on the shore. Their recognition felt like validation, and as she opened her eyes, she saw admiration glowing in the faces around her. The rush of nerves that had threatened to consume her moments before transformed into energy, electric and intoxicating. This was not just acceptance, it was liberation. She felt a renewed spark, a sense of purpose illuminating the pathway ahead. She had not only shared her music, but unveiled her identity to an audience that resonated with her struggles. Grace stepped down from the stage, beaming. Conversations blossomed as people approached her, sharing their experiences, their dreams, and their appreciation for her vulnerability. No longer did she feel like an imposter. The applause confirmed that she had validated her artistry, her essence. Weeks turned into months, and with each performance, Grace cultivated a devoted following. The whispers of doubt shifted to embers of strength, empowering her as she became an established performer in the local scene. The chance to share her stories breathed life into her identity, an artist molded through both hardship and triumph. Her family stood by her side, transformed by her courage. They celebrated her successes, finally seeing her as the multifaceted woman she had always been, one who encompassed dreams and duties alike. Grace discovered the intricacies of balance, the duality of being a musician while also a mother and daughter, each role contributing uniquely to her narrative. The cycle of growth opened doors, a recording opportunity, the chance to collaborate with other musicians, and yes, even a gathering of her own hosted evenings of music, inviting fellow artists to share their truths. She nurtured friendships built on support and understanding, having transitioned into a woman who balanced ambition with the comfort of familial bonds. One fateful evening, standing once again at her piano, Grace reflected on all she had accomplished. The music that surrounded her felt like her story spiraling out into the universe, each note echoing resilience. What lay ahead no longer filled her with trepidation. Instead, it brimmed with possibility. She had conquered fear, transformed doubt into strength, and embraced vulnerability. Now Grace stood not just as a cleaner, a mother, or an aspiring artist. She was a testament to the power of transformation, each setback a stepping stone. She had found her voice, and through it she had reshaped her entire existence. With renewed conviction she took a deep breath, fingers poised over the keys, ready to compose her next heartfelt piece. A melody that spoke of the journey still unfolding, a reminder that in every note the essence of her growth thrived. This was not merely an end, but a powerful new beginning, a testament to the unwavering spirit of resilience and the beauty of one's journey. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel for exclusive emotional stories you can't miss. Leave a like now to boost the algorithm and ensure these transformative narratives reach those who need them. Comment below your thoughts and theories about Grace's inspiring journey and how it resonates with you. Share this video with 5 friends who need to witness the strength in vulnerability and the power of dreams. Don't wait even one more second to show your support for these poignant tales.